Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Yes, welcome back.
Today, we're going deep
Yeah,
into some pretty fundamental stuff.
absolutely.
We're talking about the Indian Constitution,
Yeah.
Articles 294 to 300,
All right.
which sounds a little dry.
It does sound a little dry.
But trust me,
Oh, it's not.
these articles deal with the government's rights,
Yes.
liabilities,
Right.
and how it all
Impacts all of us?
impacts you directly. So whether you're
I'm not here.
a UPSC aspirant
Yeah.
getting ready for those tricky law questions,
Yes, sir, absolutely.
or just a citizen
Just a citizen.
who wants to understand your rights better.
Yes.
Get ready for some aha moments.
Oh, this is going to be good.
So what's really fascinating about these articles?
Well, what's fascinating is that they reveal a lot about the balance of power
Yeah.
between the government and the people.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this
Let's do it.
with property rights.
Okay.
The union government is kind of like a mega landlord
They're a mega landlord.
owning everything,
Everything.
from ancient monuments
That's right.
to the resources.
So the resources under the ocean.
Under the ocean.
Yes.
Within India's territorial waters.
Exactly. It's mind-boggling.
It's a mind-boggling
Yes.
amount of power, right?
A lot of power. And that's why understanding this is crucial,
Yeah.
not just for the legal aspects, but also for grasping the scale of the government's role in managing the nation's resources.
Right.
So think about the potential for infrastructure development, strategic planning, even environmental protection.
Right.
It all stems from this ownership.
And for UPSC aspirants, this is
Prime essay topic material.
prime essay topic material.
Yeah.
Write this down.
Yes.
Okay, and here's a little nugget that I think trips people up.
Okay.
States don't absolutely have any claim to the resources in the sea within their boundaries.
It all belongs to the union government.
It all belongs to the union government.
Which is interesting.
All right, moving on to something that sounds a little intimidating. Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
What is that all about?
Well, it sounds ominous, but it basically means the government has the right to acquire private property for public use.
Okay.
So yes, they can potentially take your land for a new highway.
Wow.
However, there are safeguards built in, like the requirement for compensation in most cases.
Okay, so there are some exceptions to
Yeah,
that,
couple exceptions.
where the Constitution specifically says
Mandates.
mandates compensation.
Yes.
First, if the government acquires property
Yes.
belonging to a minority educational institution.
Right.
And second,
If it's land that someone is personally cultivating
okay,
within legal limits.
why these specific exceptions?
Well, those exceptions reflect a commitment to protecting minority rights and individual ownership, especially in a country where land is so deeply intertwined with livelihood and identity.
Right.
So for those prepping for the UPSC, knowing these nuances is crucial.
Now, for a curveball,
Okay.
did you know the government can actually run businesses?
They can.
Just like any private citizen,
That's right. Article 298 gives them that power.
which is kind of fascinating.
And a little worrying.
And a little worrying.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Oh, it is a double-edged sword.
Okay.
For sure, on one hand, it allows the government to provide essential services,
Okay.
especially in areas where private companies might hesitate.
Right.
Think about remote healthcare facilities or infrastructure projects in underdeveloped regions.
Okay.
So it can be good.
But on the other hand,
Yes.
wouldn't this potentially discourage private investment and stifle innovation
Exactly.
if the government becomes too dominant?
That's a balancing act.
Oh.
India's history with this has been mixed with some state-run enterprises thriving while others struggled.
Yeah.
Understanding this dynamic is vital for anyone analyzing India's economic landscape, especially UPSC aspirants who might face questions on public sector performance.
So we've covered the government owning practically everything. Their right to take private property.
Yeah, with caveats.
That's caveat.
Yes.
And their ability to run businesses.
That's right.
But what happens when things go wrong?
Uh-oh.
Can you actually sue the government?
That's a good question.
Say if a government vehicle hits your car?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
This is where the concept of juristic person comes in.
Juristic person.
Yes. Article 300 basically says the government, both union and states, can be sued just like any individual or company. They're legal entities.
So it's not like suing some untouchable, all-powerful...
And not quite. But we need to understand sovereign immunity.
Sovereign immunity?
It's this old legal concept that basically said the king, or in this case the government, couldn't be sued.
Because
they were the supreme authority.
Oh, okay.
But over time, as democracies evolved, this idea began to shift.
So there's been a move towards holding the state accountable
Exactly.
for its actions.
For its actions, just like any other legal
It's
entity.
like anyone else.
And this is where landmark cases come into play.
Okay.
Cases like the P&O Steam Navigation Company case,
Right.
the Castoril case, and particularly the Nagendra Rao case, have shaped how we understand government liability, especially when it comes to negligence.
Okay, let's dig into those cases.
All right.
Because I'm guessing they are especially important for UPSC aspirants.
Absolutely. Understanding these cases provides valuable context for analyzing the evolution of legal thought in India. It's not just about rote memorization.
Yeah.
It's about grasping the trajectory of legal principles.
So starting with the P&O case.
Way back in 1861.
Way back in 1861.
Yes.
What happened there?
The P&O case was interesting because it began to differentiate between the government's sovereign functions and its other activities.
Sovereign versus non-sovereign.
Right. Back then, they were only held liable for things outside their core sovereign duties.
So if they messed up while, say, building a road
Yeah.
for defense purposes,
They were off the hook.
they were off the hook.
Pretty much. But then the Castoril case in 1965 muddied the waters a bit because it actually upheld this distinction. However, things were already starting to change. The courts began questioning what really constituted a sovereign function, slowly chipping away at this blanket immunity. And that's where the Nagendra Rao case in 1994 comes in. It was a game changer.
Game changer.
The Supreme Court basically said the government can't just hide behind sovereign immunity whenever it suits them. If a citizen is harmed due to the negligence of government officials,
Yeah.
they have a right to seek compensation.
So it was a major step towards making the state more accountable to its citizens. And for our listeners prepping for the UPSC, this case is a must-know, right?
Absolutely. It signifies a broader trend in Indian legal history, the move towards a more just and equitable society where even the government is held responsible for its actions.
Yeah.
Understanding this shift in thinking is crucial for tackling those UPSC essay questions that delve into the evolution of legal principles.
So this brings up another question. We've been talking about the government as this big entity, but what about the individuals
Yes.
within the government?
The people.
Do they all have the same level of protection?
That's a great point. The Constitution grants specific immunities to certain high-ranking officials.
Okay.
But it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. It's a bit like a legal chess game,
Right.
with different pieces having different powers and vulnerabilities.
Okay, let's break it down. Let's start with the VIPs, the president and governors.
Okay.
I imagine they have
Oh, yeah.
pretty high level of immunity.
They do. They enjoy a significant level of immunity for actions taken in their official capacity. This means you can't directly sue them personally for decisions they make as part of their official duties.
So even if someone feels a decision made by the president was harmful,
Yeah.
they can't take the president to court.
Well, not directly. You could potentially initiate proceedings against the union government for the president's actions or the relevant state government for the governor's actions. But it's important to remember that even with these immunities,
Yeah.
there are mechanisms for scrutiny, especially during impeachment proceedings for the president.
So checks and balances are still, they are in place.
Yes.
Even for those at the top.
That's right.
What about ministers?
Ministers.
Do they get the same royal treatment?
Not quite. Ministers don't have the same level of immunity. They're liable for their personal actions and can be sued like any regular citizen.
Okay.
This is important to remember for anyone interacting with government officials.
Yeah.
The principle of accountability still applies.
So if a minister crashes their car into yours, you're well within your rights to take legal action.
Exactly. It's about understanding that legal boundaries exist even within the corridors of power. Now, judges and judicial officers are a different story.
Okay.
They need a certain level of protection to make impartial decisions without fear of reprisal.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want judges constantly worrying about being sued
Right.
for every ruling they make.
Exactly.
What exactly does their immunity entail?
Well, they are granted immunity for their official acts. This means they can't be sued for the decisions they make in court. The idea is to safeguard the independence of the judiciary and ensure that they can deliver judgments without undue pressure.
So even if someone vehemently disagrees with a judge's ruling,
Yeah.
they can't hold the judge personally liable.
Correct. However, it's crucial to remember that there are established procedures for appealing court decisions and even for holding judges accountable for misconduct through disciplinary mechanisms. The system is designed to ensure fairness and accountability at all levels.
Okay, so we've got judges who are protected for their official decisions,
Yes.
ministers who are more accountable, and the president and governors with a high level of immunity.
Yeah.
But what about the vast majority of government employees, the civil servants? Where do they stand in all of this?
Civil servants are an interesting case. They have personal immunity when it comes to official contracts.
Yeah.
So if they enter into a contract on behalf of the government,
Yeah,
they aren't personally liable for any issues that arise.
that makes sense. You can't hold them personally responsible
Right.
for contracts made on behalf of the government.
Right.
But what about their actions
Yeah.
outside of contracts?
It gets a bit more complex. Remember that distinction between sovereign,
Sovereign.
non-sovereign functions we talked about earlier?
Right.
Well, if a civil servant commits a wrong, like negligence, while carrying out a sovereign function, they are generally protected.
Okay.
But if it's a non-sovereign function,
Yeah.
they can be held liable.
Okay, now my head is spinning a little.
I know it's a lot.
Could you give me an example
I can.
to make this clear?
Sure. Let's say a police officer uses excessive force while on duty.
Okay.
Whether they are protected would depend on whether the court considers the use of force to be a justifiable part of their sovereign duty of maintaining law and order.
Ah, I see. It really hinges on the specifics of the situation
It does.
and how the court interprets
Right.
those sovereign functions.
Sovereign and non-sovereign.
This is all incredibly nuanced,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see why this would be crucial
Absolutely.
for UPSC aspirants to grasp.
This is where understanding legal principles and their application in real-world scenarios becomes key. Rote memorization won't cut it. You need to be able to analyze and apply these concepts.
So to recap, we've covered the government's vast property rights,
Yes.
the power of eminent domain,
Uh-huh.
their ability to run businesses,
Right.
and this whole intricate web
It is intricate.
of liabilities and immunities that apply to the government as a whole and the individuals within it.
It's a lot to take in,
It's a lot to take in.
but it's also empowering. Understanding these legal frameworks helps you navigate your interactions with the government and comprehend your rights and responsibilities as a citizen. Whether you're a UPSC aspirant or simply someone who wants to be more informed,
Yes.
this knowledge is crucial.
It's about being an engaged and informed citizen.
It is.
And it all boils down to this: how do we hold the government accountable?
That's a great segue. We've seen how the concept of sovereign immunity has evolved and how the state is increasingly being held accountable for its actions, just like any other entity. It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, so as citizens, do we have a responsibility
Yeah.
to kind of push back against this old idea of sovereign immunity
Yeah.
and really hold the government accountable?
It's like we're moving away from this idea of the government being above the law and towards a system where everyone, including those in power, is subject to the same rules.
Right. It's a really powerful
It is.
shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting. It's not just about knowing your rights,
Yeah.
but it's about exercising them.
Yeah.
It's about being informed,
Right.
engaged citizens
Yes.
who participate in shaping the legal and political landscape.
Exactly. And for UPSC aspirants, this understanding is crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
You might be asked to analyze the evolution of these concepts or even to propose solutions to challenges related to government accountability.
It's such a fascinating area.
It is.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
Yes, it has.
We've gone from the government owning, mountains and minerals
Mm-hmm.
to them being held accountable in court.
That's right.
It's a lot to digest,
Yeah.
but it's essential knowledge
Yes.
for anyone who wants to understand how India truly works.
It's not just about facts and figures. It's about understanding the principles behind them. It's about seeing the legal framework as a living, breathing entity that's constantly evolving through interpretations, debates, and landmark judgments.
And on that note, I want to encourage everyone listening to go beyond this deep dive. Explore the full text of the Constitution. Read the articles we discuss. Research those cases.
Absolutely.
And don't be afraid to question and think critically.
Knowledge is power, and understanding your legal rights is the first step towards claiming them.
That's right.
Whether you're preparing for the UPSC or simply navigating your life as a citizen, this understanding is invaluable.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, from property rights and eminent
Yes.
domain
Yes, we have.
to government liability and the immunities of officials.
It's been a lot.
It's been dense, but hopefully incredibly insightful.
Remember, the Indian Constitution is a living document. It's constantly being interpreted and reinterpreted.
Yes.
It's up to all of us to engage with it, understand it, and ultimately help shape its evolution.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the rights, liabilities, and accountability of the government in India.
Yes, thank you.
Keep those brains buzzing, and we'll catch you in our next episode where we'll tackle another fascinating topic.
See you then.